introduce the third session of today's conference. My name is Tony McGrew, and my area of interest is in international relations and security, and I teach here at Southampton University. We have two very kind of distinguished speakers for this afternoon's first session, and you probably already know them and know their work a great deal, but I will still kind of introduce them. Patrick Holden, on my right, is director of the Soil Association and has advocated for many years organic farming. And he's probably, one of his main claims to fame, I think, is to convert the Archers to organic farming, which I think is a great achievement for those of us who are Archers fans. But I think he's done a superb job both nationally and internationally in pressing for organic farming. And on my left is Aubrey Mayer, who is going to play as his viola, I think, at some point in the afternoon. But is going to talk a lot about kind of climate change and the responses to climate change. Indeed, both speakers, in a sense, are going to take forward a slightly different agenda, which is, in a sense, to use Lenin's quote or question, what is to be done, rather than what is the problem to some extent. And I think that this is a kind of really important aspect of the discussions today. So the format is basically we'll have 25 minutes from each speaker. We will then open the floor to questions, and we'll take it in groups of questions, and then we will probably close down around about 3:45. So I will hand over to the first speaker. Thank you.
Thank you very much. You mentioned that our roots in promoting organic farming, and I'll say a little bit more about the Soil Association before I say what I have to say. Monty Don has just joined us as our president, and when I asked him if he would become our president, he said, yeah, I will, but actually it comes with conditions, because he said that the Soil Association's become known for organic food certification, and if you asked members of the public what they thought the Soil Association did, if they knew at all, they'd probably say, yeah, they're the people that certify organic food, or maybe they're a trade association which represents organic farmers and food manufacturers, which I was having a conversation over lunch about this. But actually, I think he said to me, I think the Soil Association needs to go on a journey back to its roots to become what it actually was founded to be, which is really a food movement for change. And this is a tiny little bit of potted history. Lady Balfour set up the Soil Association in 1946, just after the war, but she was inspired by the work and the ideas of a man called Sir Albert Howard, who was sent to India at the height of the British Empire in 1905 to teach the farmers of northwest India how to farm. And he arrived there and realised in 5 minutes he had nothing to teach them, luckily, because that was showing great humility against the spirit of the time. So he spent 35 years in India studying the sustainable agriculture of the peasant farmers of northwest India. And what he saw was that if you got the soil right, and the management of the soil right, and you returned waste, and you composted, and you rotated the crops, and you did all the right things in terms of husbandry and stewardship, the result would be health of plants, animals, and people. And he wrote a book which was really his homage to his 35 years in India, which was called An Agricultural Testament, which I think has got all the great ideas about sustainable agriculture in it. Published in 1940, Lady Balfour read it. She said, wow, this is incredible. We need to found an organisation to get these ideas about the interconnectedness of soil, food and health out to the public. So that was actually the impulse which led to the formation of the Soil Association. We've latterly become known for organic food, but I think it's time, faced with the huge problems that we've got in the world at the moment, to get back to our roots. And that's what I want to talk about today. And in a way, the sort of sub-theme of what I want to talk about today is the psychology of change. Because if we're faced with some sort of global meltdown, literally and metaphorically, then what is our response? And what can we do faced with the gravity of the situation we're in? I was in a conference in Oslo on climate change last October. It was actually the day after the conference. It was like a seminar for 18 of the people who were there. And there were some great and good climatologists there, and interesting and influential people. And quite quickly, during the course of this discussion, the conversation moved from mitigation to adaptation to survival. And what triggered that was a guy who was hosting it said, look, I've been studying the form of the feedback loops, and it's deadly serious, isn't it? And everyone basically said, yeah, it's much worse than anyone thought, and it seemed to be getting worse and worse. So the theme really emerged very quickly, what to do. And then it became even darker, because James Lovelock was one of the people there, and somebody said to him, well, how many people do you think that planet Earth could support from truly sustainable food systems? And he paused for a moment and said, about 1.5 billion. And no one quite knew what to say, so I thought I'd better say something. So I said, really, none of us knows what the capacity of planet Earth to support, in terms of maximum human population, is from systems which, instead of relying on 10 calories of mainly fossil fuel energy to produce each calorie of food, which is our current agriculture, to a system which we probably have to arrive at, I would say, by the mid-2020s, where we have to go back to relying on current solar energy to produce our food, i.e. 1-to-1, maybe better than 1-to-1, but you know, it's a huge shift. But what we have a responsibility to do, those of us that become awake to the seriousness of the situation that we're in, is to do everything possible to ensure that the population decline from whatever it will be when it hits its peak, maybe not 9 billion, but more than whatever we are now, 7 billion, 6.5 billion, is a gentle decline, not a collapse. And of course, you know, I'm sure many people here have read the book Collapse, where Jared Diamond points out that throughout history, populations have destroyed themselves by screwing up their agriculture or their forest growth, so over-exploiting their agriculture or their forestry, or a combination of the two. And then out of the shortages, and he could have added oil for the present context, comes a trade conflict. And then you've had, in the past, a sudden collapse of Easter Island, the Mayan civilization, various Greenland. And his book is an analysis of some of these sudden population collapses. And then, of course, at the end he says, well, the problem is that the next population collapse will be global because we've globalized everything in the 20th century. So that heightens even more, for me, the what to do question, because I don't want my children, and actually now my grandchildren, to inherit a world which is so dangerous that there is a collapse of civil society. And I think it's easy to imagine that. And if you take London, and you imagine a sudden interruption of food supplies to London, it's probably caused by terrorism, conflict, a weather event, a lorry driver's strike, or something we can't predict, or a combination of the above. And the result will be, let's say, oil and maybe gas are suddenly denied to London overnight. By day 7, you know, there's this phrase, 9 meals from anarchy. People are hungry, and they're walking down the Thames looking for food, or whatever. And the centre cannot hold, and anarchy is unleashed. And how can we stop that happening? And I think that's a real scenario. And so what we need to think about, it seems to me, over the coming 10 to 15 years, is how to prepare for the inevitability of the most radical change in agriculture since the Industrial Revolution, to move from 10 calories in to 1 calorie out to more or less current solar systems. And this awakening happened to me, and this is where I want to talk a little bit about the psychology of climate change. When I was in Dartington in March 2006, and I've been organic farming for 35 years. And maybe I was a little bit smug because I thought, you know, we've made some good changes and we've reduced our carbon dependency and all that sort of stuff. And then I heard this guy called Rob Hopkins, who's the founder of the Transition Movement, speak. And he just said, which was quite radical stuff at that time, peak oil is coming.